Coming up next on the Delaware Way, we'll introduce you to someone who says that Delaware is to Chemtech what the Silicon Valley is to high tech. This is the Delaware Way. Welcome to the Delaware Way. I'm Larry Menti. She was one of the most influential members of the Delaware General Assembly. She was Assemblywoman Melanie Smith, a Democrat from Bear, but now she is founder and CEO of Sustainable World Strategies and, as I mentioned, a retired member of the General Assembly in Delaware. Thank you so much for being here. It came as a surprise to many when you announced you weren't running for re-election. Why?
So, as any parent can appreciate, becoming a parent changes you in numerous ways, and one of them is the fact that my kids were my top priority, and I was spending so much time down in the legislature. We work really long hours, especially in June, and I was coming home with a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old who were just crying for their mother. And so after 16 years in public service, it was a very difficult decision to make, but I knew that I needed to make it for my family.
And you went on to form a new company. Tell me about that.
I did. Sustainable World Strategies. So it's actually just another version of public service, but it's from the private sector. And my company consults and inspires other organizations to improve their profits and their bottom line by helping make the world a better place.
Explain sustainability. How do you help? You're helping other companies understand and become more sustainable. Explain what that means.
So it's really exciting because in this day and age, there are so many problems in the world, and the government's never going to be able to solve all of them. So private sector has stepped up. 90% of the Fortune 500 companies have committed to sustainability, and sustainability is just about looking at your actions and the impact of your actions really on others, whether it's the environment, people, your employees, your suppliers, your supply chain employees. It's making sure that you're not buying inputs that were manufactured with child labor or trafficked labor from China or India. It's a lot of really common sense things that we want to do as human beings, as corporate citizens, to make sure that we're not negatively impacting the world. And it turns out that that actually pays. It's profitable to do that.
And so far, how have you been doing with this? Have companies been receptive?
Yes, very much. So in Delaware, it's an incredible opportunity because sustainability is a relatively new concept in Delaware. So like I said, the big ones already get it. The big companies already have their chief sustainability officers, and they have their sustainability reports and their strategies. But everyone under that, for the most part, still doesn't necessarily understand exactly what sustainability is. So Europe is much bigger on sustainability than the United States is. The West Coast is much bigger than the East Coast, and millennial-driven, tech-driven companies are much more into sustainability than everybody else. So that leaves a real opportunity in Delaware for companies to adopt sustainability strategies and have a competitive edge over everyone else.
Because I have you here, and because you were so powerful in the General Assembly, I do want to spend some time talking about your time in the General Assembly, what you saw, what can be improved, what the problems are in the General Assembly. Before I get to that, I'm going to bring up something that I know that is unpleasant for you. It was the News Journal did a story saying that you backed legislation that you're now profiting from. Is that article true?
No, it's completely false. It's unfortunate. I actually spoke to the News Journal reporter and suggested that they speak to the drafter of the legislation so that they could truly understand what the legislation does. So they would very easily be able to see that the legislation about sustainability has absolutely nothing to do with my company, but they failed to do that. So it's unfortunate, but my company is what it is. I'm trying to help make the world a better place, and I'm passionate about it. I've done that my whole life in the public sector, and now I'm continuing in the private sector.
Yeah, I saw when I was reading the article that you're talking about it, I saw that there were some people that were defending you, including the House Speaker, who said the only way that would be a problem is if you had the thought of the company when she was doing this. But it's an odd rule because it's very possible, and I think probable, that you can study sustainability, think it's important, pass legislation for it, and then say, wait a second, this is so important, I want to be a part of it.
So I think public service is in and of itself self-selecting, right? People go into public service knowing that they're going to be taking lower income, that they're going to be committing a lot of their time, away from their families to doing what we need in public service. And the challenge is that because the government, both at the federal level and at the local level, has become, in many respects, very challenging to be effective in, you're going to end up with people in public service that really, they've really got to have the tenacity to fight through the bureaucracy in government to be able to make things happen.
Yeah, so I would think that if you're dealing with sustainability, some people would want you because you know the topic and because you had legislation for it. What are some of the problems right now with the General Assembly? I think specifically about, I know we don't have it this year because there's been a surplus in the budget, but every year it seemed for a while we had a budget crisis. It was just grinding through this budget crisis, and there was this fighting over money every single year. It didn't seem like the way to run a government.
So you're right. That was one of the biggest challenges that we had. I had the privilege of serving as chair of the Joint Finance Committee for the past 6 years. Unfortunately, almost every one of those 6 years, we really had to cut because there was more of a budget deficit. And the reason for that is because our expenditures in government were growing faster than our revenues were growing. And it's not a matter of the government just saying, oh, here, we're just going to throw money out. It really wasn't like that. The governor, the administration, the legislature, they've really been doing an incredible job, really for the last decade, even under Governor Markell and his budget director, of going through the budget and identifying where are programs that are not really as efficient as they should be, where are we spending money maybe that we should reallocate. They've gotten rid of all of that low-hanging fruit. What we're doing right now is literally spending money on things we have to. So when you have more kids growing in the schools, you have to fund more teachers. When you have debt, you have to fund your debt. Your electricity, Medicaid, that's one of the biggest expenditures. It's almost 20% of the entire budget. So when you've got more people on Medicaid, there's going to be more cost to it.
But you need to save money too, right? Because right now we have an upswing in the economy. There's going to be a downswing, and then you're going to go through these budget fights again if you're not ready for it.
Absolutely.
Is that being done?
The governor does have a plan. I'm not 100% sure where it is this particular year because I'm no longer a legislator, but I think the plan was to save a little bit every year. And actually last year when I was chair of the Joint Finance Committee, we did that. We took 1% of the budget, which is around $46 million, and we just didn't spend it.
We're running out of time, but I wanted to ask, if there was one thing you could change about the General Assembly, one thing that could make it work better, what would it be?
More communication. I think people don't always understand each other, whether it's within the legislature or from outside to inside. I think it's very easy for bloggers to look at what goes on in the legislature and think that, everybody's doing things wrong. I think if people actually understood that the legislators have good hearts, they're all well-meaning, they're trying to do what they think is best, and appreciate that, then I think we'd be able to have a better dialogue.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. Melanie George Smith, former Assemblywoman from Bayer, now founder and CEO of Sustainable World Strategies, and as I said, a retired member of the General Assembly. When we come back, it is one of the exciting new startups in Delaware that could launch Delaware in the biotech industry to what the Silicon Valley is for the high-tech industry. We'll explain when the Delaware Way continues.